Hey everybody. After beating just about everything there was to beat in the main playthrough of Sinner's Sacrifice for Redemption, I spent a few months on and off trying to complete this nightmare challenge. I recorded most of my attempts, and there were a whole lot of them, because it doesn't usually take very long to die here. I figured I'd show you, by far, my best attempt. The trick I discovered is use the flame buff early against Faistalus, not right at the start of the fight, because a lot of times he'll use an attack that makes it impossible for you to get close to hit him, and you're just wasting some time and some health. But if you can defeat him quickly enough and the flame does a lot of damage to him, you won't have to deal with Rhodes at the same time. Unfortunately, the flame buff always runs out just before I get to hit Rhodes at all. But fighting him one-on-one is a heck of a lot easier. And there are a couple of other things that you really gotta get used to, like being able to attack him while he's down. This is pretty much the one time that I didn't manage to get a running start either time. Because you've got to have him most of the way dead before his minions start shooting arrows at you. Because you'll get stunned to death pretty much every time. I don't know how I managed to luck out so much on this attempt. And remember, this is my best one. Chanel is probably the hardest part of the entire thing, because you have to defeat her before Camberluce shows up. So you gotta be more aggressive and a lot less defensive than you otherwise would. Being able to parry perfectly is important, and it's also really useful to be able to pin her against the side of the arena. She can only dodge backwards, so if you don't leave her enough room, you can get in some really good, solid hits. Of course, you also have to preserve your own health. And don't get too close when she powers up. Don't think I've got a whole lot of time here. There were several attempts where I got this far at least, and found myself fighting both of these bosses at once. It's barely manageable. Camberluce at least doesn't have a whole lot of ranged attacks, so if you can stay away from him and lure Chanel over to you, you can survive. And having a bit of lingering flame buff really helps here, because he takes forever to defeat. I don't know why, but it seems like the bosses in this mode just take more damage from your attacks. Even discounting the fact that normally if you fight Rhodes you would lose some attack, and you don't do that in this mode. Everything just takes fewer hits to kill, which is nice. I'm definitely not going to complain. Nothing has really changed about Camberluce except that you don't have icebergs to ram him into if he starts doing a spinning attack. I probably should have just gone ahead and thrown a spear at him at this point, but it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So that was my first time ever getting this far. And I need to work out Levin Indok pretty quickly. That is obviously not the right way to go about it. I really wasn't sure what to expect at this point. But what's interesting is that in this mode she doesn't actually do the head swapping animation. She can just do lightning attacks and weapon attacks in any combination. It's not as bad as it sounds, but you really do have to be prepared for anything at any time. That was me not being prepared for that attack. but she's striking lightning really far away, giving me a chance to go in, get the job mostly finished. I got really sloppy at the end there. And there's Yordo. At the very least, I managed to finish her off, and this is usually not too difficult to fight, especially since I've got the scythe and its amazing riposte. Look at that, that was like a third of his damage all in one attack. The problem is, there's not a lot of room on this ledge to dodge his minions, and I'm rather low on a lot of resources, especially healing after getting through all those other bosses. And getting caught in one gigantic attack is pretty much the end of it. I mean, I'll do my best, but even if I get a riposte at this point, it's not going to do me a whole lot of good. And going for the riposte is going to cost me dearly, I think. I'm really just chipping away, and I think the best option at this point is just to swap back to the greatsword, because I'm not going to be riposting when he's got his greatsword out. I don't know what I was thinking, but I probably wasn't going to finish the challenge in that point anyway. Most of my attempts went something more like this. So yeah, I'm not going to be showing the full playthrough of Nightmare Mode anytime soon. I did my best. But then, they released an update to the game, so there's a lot of new stuff in here. We've got 4 different modes to play through. The original trial we've seen plenty of. In the Trial of Speed, your dodge rolls no longer make you invulnerable, but it does increase your running speed, which doesn't help all that much. Then you've got the Die and It's Finished playthrough. And finally, no dodge roll invulnerability, and a single death ends your run, and you lose all your sacrifices right from the start. I'm not going to be attempting that one. There's also a new challenge, the Illusion Challenge. That one is just a practice mode where you can fight any of the bosses you defeated. And yeah, there's a bunch of question marks at the bottom because there's a new boss that they added in this update. We'll get to that. In the meantime, here are the different things that it tracks when you're fighting the bosses. I'm not really sure that there's any point to it. It's just kind of a chance to practice stuff without giving up any of the sacrifices. And, you know, see how well you can do, get the fastest time. So I'm going to go in the normal mode, just so that I can see what the deal is with this hidden boss. I've got a vague idea of what I'm going to need to do, but looking around to see if there are any extra stones or anything like that, there's nothing. So I figured I'd just start on my normal playthrough about the way I usually would. You could tell how out of practice I am, probably. Going in for that flame buff, and then she shoots a volley of arrows just as I'm landing the penultimate attack. Once again, I didn't manage to get past without having to fight the worm, but the worm is no big deal. And I've gotten all the rewards out of not redeeming bosses, so I'm just going to redeem everyone this time. And yeah, here we go, the story of Modic, the extra boss. And once we've heard the story, the egg appears, and she has nothing further to say on the subject. So yeah, Modic, the avatar of cowardice. Not one of the 7 deadly sins, but it's just kind of an extra thrown in here anyway. Got an interesting beat at the very least. And a far more dramatic entrance than any of the other bosses. And yes, we're fighting a giant chicken with armor. First I thought it was a robotic chicken, but no, it seems to be mostly living parts, and it's just got a barbed wire fence on its legs, and a breastplate, and a mask. And meanwhile, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of difficulty just yet. It runs around and tries to peck me, tries to jump on me. I'm just gonna kinda take it easy, dodge what it throws, and smack it when I can. You know, approaching this the same way you do any boss. Go in, get yourself killed because you have no idea what to expect. I do want to try to destroy this egg, though. And I see some cracks in the shell. Maybe hitting it more would destroy it, but I think I'm just gonna have to leave it because there are smaller chickens. They're just going to hatch from the eggs over the course of the fight. I'm not sure that any of what they can do is going to be particularly dangerous. But as I see more of them appearing, I think it's probably better to just go for the main boss here. No particularly great threats on offer here, and I'm doing steady damage. Here goes the Liu Kang bicycle kick, because every boss has got to have that. I could probably run between the bars of the cage and fall off, but there is a nice visual indicator there, so it's not much of a threat. And I'm just going to keep ducking and dodging this way. Keep out of the way until I see an opportunity to go in for an attack. Particularly use that running attack to go past it while doing the damage. And don't get directly behind it because it can kick backwards and kind of take your head off. And there's a little more to it, but this fight is pretty much done. Yeah, beat it on my first attempt. How's that for a hidden boss? It does, however, unlock a new weapon for us. This is Chanel's weapon. For some reason, it's the Pick of Chastity, because I guess they didn't want to call it the Pick of Lust. Or the Blades of Lust. And otherwise, we can just go back in and fight him over and over again. Since there's no sacrifice to be made and no reward to be gained other than unlocking the weapon, nothing stops you from fighting it as many times as you want. So let's try out this weapon. A very familiar combo on the quick attack and the strong attack. Charging it up, we get that little dash move, which is nice, but doesn't cover nearly as much ground as when she does it. And there's the dashing attack. Doesn't matter which attack button I use, it's just a short dash and a slice with both weapons. So I guess the most interesting boss to try this on would be the one that I've only fought one time before. So, going up against Modic, certainly not having seen all of his tricks, with a weapon that I'm not familiar with. This should be, at the very least, a more even match than the last one was. But I think my strategy is going to be the same. Keep to a distance and use the dashing attacks to get in close whenever I've got an opportunity. And something is really, really wrong with the graphics of his head in this fight. I honestly don't know what's going on. I think we'll see it a bit more later. But the thing that concerns me is that there is a second weapon you can unlock by fighting him. I don't know what it is or exactly what conditions cause it to unlock, but I figured I would at least try a second fight. See whether maybe defeating him with the pick is the condition. And to be honest, I don't know why it didn't unlock in this combat, but forewarning, I'm not going to end up getting the second weapon here. I'm trying to hit its head with some throwing weapons, figuring that maybe that's what I need to do, but I've landed some solid hits on his head in both fights, and it didn't do anything. So I just kind of assumed that that's not what I'm supposed to do. And meanwhile, the fight's just kind of happening. He's keeping his distance fairly well for the most part, but I can cover a lot of distance with my attacks too, so I'll just keep playing chicken, as it were. There we go. I finally took the full force of a bicycle kick, and it didn't quite finish me off. Admittedly, if I were any weaker, having made any more of the sacrifices, I probably would have died there. And his head's still glitching out all over the place. Really messy. But I think I can finish the job before it completely destroys the game or anything like that. He's standing in the firebomb and getting roasted, that's nice. I know he's got at least one more move that I don't think we've seen here, and we're not going to. Yeah, we can't destroy him, he just kind of auto-redeems at the end of the fight. I don't have a prompt, I don't have an opportunity to do anything. So I think I'm just kinda done with that. Let's move on and see how this weapon works in some other situations. Just kinda take it for a test run. I'm thinking I probably want to keep the greatsword because that's my most reliable weapon for most situations. Just in case I ever get into a condition where the pick isn't working for me, so I can go on and attempt to finish the fight. I do intend to cut out most of these loading screens and otherwise unskippable stuff for future playthroughs. I think everybody's got the idea by now, and not even the developers thought it was worth seeing that stuff more than once. But in particular, I want to see if all my practice in Nightmare mode has helped me get better at some of the bosses. Not that I've had much practice against this particular boss in any other mode. Interestingly, I managed to knock Undok out of the Dance of Death animation. But they got me just the same. That is something that I didn't really notice all that much before the update, though, is being able to stun some of the bosses out of some of their moves. Here, I just didn't recognize they were doing the Dance of Death until it was way too late. couldn't really take my eyes off them to go hide. And the combo was just unfair. But I did get a fair bit of use out of the pick in the meantime, so we're going to do this entire fight with it. And I'll hopefully get to show you some of the neat aspects of this weapon. In particular, because it lands so many hits so quickly, it's got a much higher chance to stun than most of the other weapons. At least that's the way it seems to me, because I've stunned some enemies out of animations that I've never stunned them out of with any other weapon. I suppose 2 lightning spears will stun most enemies. The pick will do it too, not so reliably that I would recommend going in on any of the animations that would be really dangerous to get hit through. But it works most of the time. You can even stun her out of switching heads, although it was a little too far there to go in and get started before she could follow through with the motion. And she would have just finished the job. But you can do a ton of damage to one body without the other one showing up, which is really nice. Trying to stun her out of some of her attack animations here. Take the opportunity to get more hits in. Yeah, there, she was about to switch heads, I think, and then she stopped because I had stunned her with these weapons. But she's gonna finish it now. Couldn't quite get the stun in time. Yeah, you can parry with the pick too. But we won't be able to see the riposte until we get to Yordo, so... Yeah, I tried parrying that axe. I don't know whether my timing was off or whether that just can't be parried. But I want to get in and get some damage before both bodies show up. I was very badly positioned. So I'm just going to revert to my usual strategy of throwing every attack item I've got at the one that's weaker. Sadly, not by much. Get hit by a full bolt of lightning, that's always a good strategy too. This time I know the Dance of Death is coming, and I nearly ran off the side of the stage. Just kind of camp out, wait for it to finish, and of course the one I want to target is way over on the other side of the room. Wouldn't have it any other way. But the nice thing with this weapon is you really can afford to get in close sometimes. That was not one of the times, but I think the pick, I feel safer close to the boss than I do with most other weapons because there is that chance of stunning them out of the attack that's about to kill you. And here again, I could just stay at a distance and finish her with the spears, but it's mostly safe to get in there, get in the attacks, and I'm just living on the edge this entire fight, I think. Completely out of healing. And there is the big advantage of using the Pick of Chastity here. She didn't finish the chandelier summoning animation, so there will be no falling chandeliers for the rest of the fight. It just never happens. And that's what I mean by the increased chance of stun. It might be possible to do that with any other weapon. I've never been able to pull it off. Didn't even really want to try. This one, about half the time you get this far into the fight, I'd say you'll manage to knock her out of it. So I finally come out on top of the battle of attrition and managed to finish the fight. Wasn't too bad, really, and I've gotten used to this weapon now. It's one of my favorites. And I'll try to show it off a bit more. But that's enough boss fights for this video. Chanel, of course, never has anything interesting to say, not even about her own weapon. She's just kinda there. And I'll see you back here next time.